UFC Vegas 88, March 16th, fighting on the card, Chelsea Chandler. Chelsea, great to talk to you again. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Deep in camp. I'm excited for the fight, and I'm ready to get in there.
And then, we'll get into last time out in a second, but I don't know. In my opinion, anytime I compete and I lose and I need to come back, I put more pressure on myself for better and worse. So how are you feeling in regards to that going into this fight?
I always put an insane amount of pressure on myself. So I feel like training has been the same. I've just had a little bit more of an emphasis in certain arts in my jiu-jitsu. I feel like last fight camp I didn't really do a ton of jiu-jitsu, and I should have, and I kind of paid for that. So I've done a lot of emphasis on that this camp, a lot of wall stuff, a lot of striking. So I feel like I'm more well-rounded for this fight, and I'm excited for it.
And your first loss since your pro debut, first loss in the UFC, like what is your immediate reaction when you hear the scorecards not go your way?
Well, I kind of knew I lost before the scorecards. The bad thing about fighting, it's not really bad, but it's not like basketball or baseball where you have games every week. You get to redeem yourself the next week. You get to work on stuff that week. With fighting, it's always everybody remembers you for your last fight. So, you can get into a bad slump and not do good, and then if you let it take over, it can take over. So for me, I work on things that I need to work on, watch the fight, and I plan to fix things and fight again. So for me, it kind of sucked because I wanted to fight a little bit sooner. They didn't really offer me a fight afterwards. So I like to get back in there, and I'm excited now, but it's hard with downtime. Motivation is also a thing, and when you have a fight, it's a little bit easier to say skip a meal or diet versus when you don't have a fight. So I'm also going back down to bantamweight for this fight. So I'm expecting to be bigger and stronger than a lot of these girls because I'm a big girl. So.
And is this move down to bantamweight, was that your decision? Is UFC kind of forcing that hand?
Yeah, forcing. I signed up as a UFC fighter at bantamweight, so I wouldn't necessarily say they're forcing me, but I would prefer to be at featherweight.
I guess not forcing, but getting rid of the featherweight division more.
I feel like they are. Yeah.
And last time we talked, it was interesting because a big point you had was you wanted to kind of be that new face of the featherweight division. And you also had a lot of hype, win away from a title shot. We were talking. And from my perspective, skill-wise, I don't think much has changed. I think you're still right up there at the top. But how do you feel about your trajectory? Does a win here kind of get you right back to that spot?
Yeah, you got the UFC bantamweight division, especially. If I would have won that fight, I feel like I would have had a title shot, So it just really, it's fast. UFC, the bantamweight division is wide open. You have that Mara chick who I don't really think is that great, and she fought like 3 or 4 unranked opponents. She armbarred Stephanie Egger, who was not ranked. Then she choked Holly Holm, who was ranked, but that was her one opponent that was ranked. And then she got an instant title shot after cheating, failing drug tests, and all that stuff. So, if they're going to overlook someone for all that stuff, I'm not really worried. I think if I go out there and I do what I'm supposed to do, it'll be, I'll be right back in the conversation.
And I'll ask you about, Raquel Pennington and Myra Bueno Silva and all that a little bit later. But before that, I would love to know about your fight. You're going up against Josiane Nunes. And before I ask you about general thoughts, something that's going to stand out during weigh-ins and face-offs is this height difference. She's one of the smallest people in the division. You're very tall. So how do you prepare for that?
You got to spar with midgets, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the UFC, they like to do these little freak show fights. She fought Bia Malecki, who's like 6 foot. She fought Zaire Farin, who's like 6 foot. And they've got this chick doing all these David and Goliath fights. And I don't know. I think that caters to a specific type of fan. But yeah, you have to spar little people because it's different. You know, it's different shooting a takedown on a little person. They're a little bit more dense, and she's little and small and compact, so she throws hard punches, and I feel like she doesn't really have a hard weight cut. So she's able to, you watch all her fights, she gets going and doesn't stop, and she's like a little terror. So it's important to be in shape for this fight. And yeah, I mean, I'm expecting to, you know, flick this little girl around, but at the same time, I'm acknowledging that she is a handful, and I'm going to be prepared for it.
So something her style consists of is really closing distance, pushing pace. She's very strong, even though she doesn't have the reach a lot of the other bantamweights have. So I guess, how do you deal with that stylistically? Like, what kind of fight do you see this being?
So, you know, I see this fight being a couple different ways. I am Southpaw, she's Southpaw. So it's kind of cool because I don't really get to fight Southpaws that often. So this fight could go standing. From watching some of her fights, she doesn't do really well when someone's jabbing her. So, I mean, if I wanted to, I could coast on this fight, throw the jab at her, you know, move around, beat her up with just the jab, jump around. And then I also don't think her jiu-jitsu is that well. So I'm going to go in there and have a couple different game plans, a couple different plans, and just see how it plays out. You know, I might go in there, play around with her, hit her with the jab, see if it's hitting. And if she's coming forward real crazy, I might take her down. So I'm expecting for this fight to go everywhere, and I'll be prepared for wherever it goes.
And then who's going to be with you in the corner for this one?
So I'm gonna have Victor Galden, my coach, my boxing coach Felipe Martinez, and then I believe I'm gonna have Big Boss Muay Thai.
So still rocking in Stockton.
Yeah,
How's camp been?
it's going good. Yeah, I'm training hard, doing a ton of running and a ton of dieting, and you know that part's not the best, but I feel good, and the body fat's coming down, so I'm really excited for this.
And like, I mean, obviously you have to make changes in terms of the cut and going down a weight class, but do you make any drastic changes based on the outcome of last fight? Because I don't think you looked bad during the fight. It's just a loss. Does that mentally be like, I got to change some things up. I got to do this differently?
Yeah, you know, there were a couple things that I did differently for that camp that I really haven't done in the past. I focused a lot on strength and conditioning. I was doing super early 6 a.m. trainings to, you know, to get my conditioning up. And I kind of paid for that because I wasn't focusing on things I needed to, because by the end of the day, when everybody's training, because you know it is Stockton, everybody training super late at night. I was tired and I felt like, you know, grandma, I got to go to bed because I've been up since 6. And so I've kind of changed that. This fight's going to be at around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. So I've tried to make sure all my sparring sessions and my hard training sessions are catered to that time. So a little bit better game planning on that. And then, yeah, my last fight, I think it was on the main card, and I think I was fighting at 6 or 7. And normally that's when I was winding down. So I was really tired in the back, not tired as in like exhausted. I was just kind of sleepy and I was going through the motions. So yeah, planning on the timing and catering my timing around the fight are things that I've done different this camp, and I think it'll work out in favor.
So, you know, without looking past Nunez here, just me asking my questions, what is next ideally for you? Like, do you have a return date in mind? Any cards that stick out?
Well, you know, I went to school at University of Miami, and I really wish I would have been on the Miami card, but they didn't do that. So, but you know, honestly, it really depends. I'm expecting a hard fight, and it just depends on how I come out. Like if anything's, you know, injured or not. I'm praying for the best. But you know, with a fight and with a person that hits really hard, you have to take a certain amount of time off. Like you can see Volkanovski, who got KO'd and came back way too fast. I think a lot of fighters, you know, that's the other thing. Like when you fight and say you lose and you rush it back in, your head isn't recovered, you know, things aren't fixed. And then once you get knocked out or knocked down, things like that, it takes time to heal. And if you go back in too early, you'll get knocked out and dropped out a lot faster than you regularly should have, because you're not healed and you're not ready. So It depends on how this fight goes. If it's a fast fight, then yeah, get me back in there. But I do have a hard weight cut. Every time at bantamweight is hard. So I like to play it by ear, go in there and then figure it out. But yeah, we'll see.
And then UFC just came to, I guess, your neck of the woods. When it came to California, would you like to be on one of those cards someday? Hopefully that happens once a year.
I worry about fighting in California because I heard their taxes are crazy. And then the other thing is I'm like I said, I'm a big girl. So when I weigh back in or when I get weighed in the next day for the fight at bantamweight, I've always been like 165. So California has a weight limit, right? They say, oh, you have to weigh this much, you have to do 10%, or you can't, or they'll suspend you, or they'll say you have to move up. So weighing 165 pounds the next night, I don't think is even in California's code. So getting in trouble, getting suspended, things like that, it's really not something I want to do. I like Vegas. It's close enough, and they don't weigh you the day of the fight.
Hey, fair enough. There's a lot of complaints about California and New York, and I know me and you probably feel very similarly about a lot of those states. But
Yeah.
irregardless, or regardless, I don't know if irregardless is actually a word, but what goals do you have for yourself this year? I feel like we're in quarter one of 2024. You have that loss behind you now. You have like a great opportunity on the calendar year to start fresh. So, like, what do you want to get done this year?
The title is always that's always the goal. I really feel like the bantamweight division is not that deep, and I think with 2-3 wins, I will be right back in the mix. So I just plan on going out there, fighting like I fight, and seeing where it goes. But I definitely I'm planning on being more active this year. So hopefully the matchmakers will oblige.
And then, yeah, as we were talking about earlier, Raquel Pennington comes in, beats Mayra Bueno Silva. Mayra starts out hot, and then she just straight gassed it for almost 4 rounds in a row. Now Pennington's new champ. So my first question there is, what did you think of that fight overall?
Boring, sucked, horrible. Nobody wanted to watch it. And it's in freaking Toronto. Like, oh my God, it was horrible. It also goes back to my fight when I think Mayra said that she got hit in the ear and her balance was off or this and that. And to a certain extent, I kind of believe that because in my fight, especially when you're fighting the top people in the world, one little mistake and it can cost you the fight, and it's millimeters, not inches. So you get hit with one hard punch, you might not recover from that. And that's kind of what happened to me. So I kind of see it in that terms. But then also it's like the veteran Raquel Pennington has fought forever. She has a lot of tools that she's developed, and she's had fight camp after fight camp, and she's been around since the beginning. So I figured she was going to win. And yeah, I feel like the division is wide open, and yeah.
So, I mean, you being only a couple wins away, how do you feel like a fight between you and Rocky would go down?
I feel like it'd be a hard fight, a dog fight. She likes to fight, and I like to fight, and I think my jiu-jitsu is better than her, and I think that's where I would probably take the fight. But at the end of the day, she's a dog, and I think it would be a good fight.
And I don't even have this one written down. I'm just curious, just because you're talking about the division being wide open. Do you see a revenge path against Norma at all on your road to the title?
So we could talk about this. So, my I would have planning based on the weight. We fought at 45, and she's a big, strong girl, and I think she's set up to fight again at 35. And I don't think she's made weight more than once or twice at bantamweight. So, I think at a fight at the right weight, where it's 135, which is my true weight class, I think I would win. And yeah, we'll see how this fight goes. But I mean, I really don't see her sticking around in the UFC too much longer. I think she's gonna fight that Germaine Durandame. I don't know if she's gonna make weight or not, and we'll see. Once people leave the UFC, they're not in the rankings anymore. So I mean, I really don't think about her too much. So
My last question for you before I get you out of here, and we're talking about Norma, Jermaine Durandamine, yourself, all former 145ers now moving down to 135, and somebody else in this category is now Kayla Harrison, a lightweight coming over to the UFC, having to fight bantamweight. So, what are your thoughts on her addition to the promotion?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I watched her fight in Invicta. I think she fought at 45 against one of my former people I fought against. She fought Courtney King, and she did good. But at the end of the day, I think she's got some type of blood sugar issue or whatever. And at the end of the day, for women especially, weight cuts are hard, and you can do all the planning and the weight cut, with all the scientists and the doctors, but it really comes down to the day. Is your body letting go of the water, and then you might cut weight and do good for the weight cut, and then you might feel like shit in the fight. And it's all about that day. So we're gonna see, she's fighting real formidable opponent, Holly Holm, and you could test for it, you can plan for it, but I think until that night when they're in the cage and we see how it goes, that's when you start looking at her. Okay, she made the weight, she can do it. But she could go in there, not be able to take a punch, not be able to take a kick, and you never know. So I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a hard weight cut for her, but she probably could do it. So
Hey, if the money's there, she could probably do it. You know what I mean? Money
yeah.
talks, especially when
Oh
there's a
yeah,
scale involved.
yeah. Money talks. It pays for the dietitian. It pays for the chef. It pays for all the shit. So yeah, I wish I had a chef telling me what to eat. I think I'd have a better camp. But yeah,
A couple more wins, you'll be racking up that bread and doing the same thing, doing the same thing.
yeah,
But
that's the plan.
Chelsea, before I get you out of here, you got fans all over the place excited for this fight, myself included, microphone aside, can't wait for it. That being said, anything you would like to say to everybody? If so, take it away. The mic is yours.
I'm excited to fight March 16th in Vegas. Hopefully I don't run this time. And yeah, I'm excited to put on a show, and stay tuned.
But before I get you out of here, I didn't even need to comment, but I will comment. The running instance and you taking the high ground and posting that screenshot and laughing at it, like, let me just tell you, that's how you handle things like that. It was funny. It was a good moment in the sport, and I don't know, we talked about it in the DMs. I thought it was great. So I'm glad you
Yeah.
I'm glad you took it on the chin and roll with it rather than, posting it was good. So good job.
Thank you.
And if you're gonna run this time, just run towards a cage and then real quick turn around with like a little Anthony Pettis shit or something,
Yeah, I should have done a spinning back fist, I think, because the way she had her hands, it would have been perfect. But
A flying
next
Stockton
time.
slap off the cage. Come on,
Something
bro.
crazy would have been nice. I know.
Hey, UFC Vegas 88, you get your opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen,
Yes.
Chelsea Chandler, make sure you don't miss it, March 16th.